Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special Sucrose Collision stream. I'm your host, Sugar Crush, here to help you guys have a relaxing evening. Whether you need some help sleeping, something to help you focus for work, or if you're trying to study, whether you get tingles from ASMR, or if you just want some chill vibes tonight, I hope you find this enjoyable and soothing. I'm going to be doing some maintenance on my arcade stick controller tonight. I'm going to give it a good clean and make sure the parts on the inside are nice and well taken care of. I know some of you have asked me before what kind of controller I use when I'm playing fighting games on stream, and this is it right here. This is the Hori Fighting Stick Alpha, the little Hori logo right up here. The Fighting Stick Alpha. This is the Xbox version, but even though I don't have an Xbox, but it works just as well on PC. And I have an adapter stick that plugs into the cable that I can use to connect to PS4s when I need to, which is really useful because most local, scene stuff tends to be off of a PS4. Also, when I go to play games over at friends' places, they have, PS4s, PS5s, so that helps for that. But they do make this in both an Xbox version and a PlayStation 5 version. Although, from what I understand, the PlayStation 5 version doesn't stay in stock too often. The Xbox version is a lot easier to get a hold of. Before I start cleaning this though tonight, I thought I'd just talk a little bit about this controller, how it works, some of the features of it, stuff like that. I've always really enjoyed Hori's controllers, and pretty much ever since I've been buying arcade sticks for use at home, I've gone with theirs. This controller is modified from how it originally came. It's one of the things I actually really like about this particular model. That's very unique to this model from Hori's previous arcade sticks. It's very, very easy to modify. They make it very easy to swap parts out, whether it's the buttons you're looking to replace, or the stick, or the gating on the stick, or the artwork on here. The controller is made with the idea in mind that you are going to replace stuff in this. And so what they did here, there is, I don't know if you can see it here, there's a little switch along the back here. If I lift this up, you can probably see it a little bit better. It's right along the back here. And when you flip it in there, this opens up on a hinge, which gives you access to the inside very easily. Previous controllers I've owned, if you wanted to get in there and do similar things like replacing buttons or artwork or anything like that, you basically had to dismantle the entire controller, which was a little more tedious, a little more difficult. But with this one, it's so easy. You just flip the switch, open it up, and you have access to everything right there. You'll see it in a little bit when we open this up to take a look on the inside. But first, for now, the buttons on this, which I kind of like how the buttons sound. I'm pushing these a little softly so that they don't make some very sharp noises. When you tap them a little more forcefully, like in a game, you can hear a little bit more what they typically sound like. But I like that feedback, right? That feedback of actually being able to really hear when you're pressing a button. That's one of the things I've always enjoyed about arcade sticks, is that you have that very tactile feedback. These buttons are they're clicky. They're not snappy though. There's a good amount of give to them. Um, they don't feel very mushy. They feel like pretty crisp, but they're also not like, it's not too difficult to push them down. They give pretty easily. Same thing with the controller here. You can hear those clicks in there. It's all off of micro switches. But the buttons and the lever on this are all Sanwa parts. I've always really enjoyed Sanwa parts. They're kind of considered among the community sort of the standard in terms of quality for arcade parts that you would use in a stick that you'd get at home here. They're definitely not the only brand out there that's that good, but it's kind of the easy go-to if you are one of those things that if you're ever not sure what brand, Sanwa has always been like just the very standard one that everybody trusts, the stick didn't come with these buttons or the stick initially. In fact, they didn't come with Sanwa parts at all initially. They came with another brand of parts called Hayabusa, which are also, high quality arcade parts that are used in actual arcade control or arcade cabinets in Japan. I have one of the buttons right over here, and you can see it's a little hard to tell to compare them, from here. But if you look up here, up towards the camera there, you might be able to tell that these are they're seated a little lower in the casing compared to the Sanwa buttons here, and they have a little bit less give. So when you push them, you get down to the switch very, very quickly. In fact, they're kind of known for having a bit of a hair trigger. It's one of the reasons I wound up not really loving them, is the fact that the responsiveness of them is very quick. It's very easy. All of that can be a very good thing, right? But I often felt like I just preferred the slightly more deliberate push of the Sanwa buttons. And that's not to say that Sanwa is not also a very responsive button. They very much are. It does not take much force to push these down. But they always felt slightly more deliberate to me. But it really just comes down to preference. They're both very good parts. There are people who really, really like the Hayabusa buttons and stick. The stick was the same way. Very, very responsive, very easy to get an input. From my experience, though, slightly too easy. I felt like I was getting some misinputs with them, which if you guys have seen me play, especially Dragon Ball FighterZ, watching me, I have a problem sometimes when I'm trying to go from holding down blocking to block low, and I want to come up to block mid. I often wind up getting these accidental jump inputs, right? With the Sanwa stick, it happens. It's a thing I have some issues with. With the Hayabusa stick, it was happening way more though, because you really didn't have to move the stick very far at all to trigger the next switch. Some people love that, right? Some people really, really like that ultra responsive, very, very hair trigger kind of thing. For me, it was a little much. So I went back to Sanwa. But I think what I'll do here for you guys is just, I enjoy the sound of these buttons clicking. So I'll give you a little bit of that here real quick. Some slightly more deliberate taps, hopefully not too loud. Let me back away so that it doesn't peak the mic here. We don't want to blow your guys' eardrums out here while you're having your chill times, right? But that just gives you a little bit more of a sound of what it would actually sound like in game, because you're not pushing these that softly in game. But just the soft press of them, the click of that switch on the inside, I really enjoy that. So something else kind of neat So this stick, which I talked about being, a Sanwa stick, the lever itself, so the actual stick part of the stick, actually isn't Sanwa. When I talk about the stick being Sanwa, what I'm talking about is the base on the inside, and you'll see that when we open it up. But this stick itself, um, it's actually another custom part. I am trying to remember the name of the brand that the company that makes these parts, but I can't remember exactly. I do know they were at Frosty Faustings. I went to their booth, really liked looking at their stuff. I actually got a stick gate, which I'll explain that in a bit too once we open this up from them. I got a stick gate from them also, but I also got this lever. The cool thing about this lever is that there's a little switch here at the very base of it. Not really obvious looking at it, but if you pull up on these little ridges right at the bottom here, and I'll show you a little bit better once I get them up. If you pull up on here, it slides up, and if you pull, hopefully that pop wasn't too loud, the stick itself actually detaches from the controller. So you can see here bring this up closer to the camera here so you can see that mechanic that kind of moves up and down. Kind of gets in. I also really like the little bubbly clear arcade stick top here. That's also custom. This is really cool to me. I think it's super useful. If you talk to anybody who's ever owned an arcade stick like this, right? One of the things that they will tell you is actually really difficult about it is transportation. They make entire, very expensive bags specifically for transporting these guys. Because even though this controller isn't that big, it's really not any bigger than like a laptop. Fits kind of neatly in your lap, all that stuff. But because you have this stick poking out of here, it can be very difficult to fit into a bag or a case or anything like that. Usually when you're talking about cases for transporting these things, they have to have allowance for this portion of the stick here, and it usually has some kind of cushioning so that this doesn't, rattle about and, bump up against here. But the fact that you can remove this thing and take it off means that you can then the stick now, the controller lays pretty flat and it'll slip right into a bag. Like I said, not really any bigger than like a laptop. And I've got a couple laptop bags. I've got a backpack that fits laptop specifically, and this fits in there nice and neat. And it's made transporting this thing just so much easier. Plus, it's this really cute pink color that I really like, and it goes perfectly with the color scheme and aesthetics of the rest of the stick that I've kind of chosen to do here. So let me go ahead and put this back into the seating. We just pull this part back up, press it down, and it's back in. Like it never left, right? The artwork on here is also modified. It's another thing I like about this stick because it's pretty much made with the idea in mind that you're going to put your own art in. So the plexiglass cover here comes up very easily. You do have to have the buttons, obviously, all removed. And same thing with the stick here. This needs to be out. But once those are all out, there's these little hinges up here, and it just snaps out. And the entire front of this front panel comes out, and you can just slide your artwork right in there and close it back up. And it's protected by the plexiglass. The framework around here snaps in, so there's no dirt or anything that gets in there. No moisture, keeps the artwork nice and safe. My last stick was a lot harder to do that with. It wasn't really made with it in mind that you would be putting your own artwork in. I had to get, a plexiglass overlay for that to just kind of sit on top of it and screw on. And obviously the stick wasn't made for that. So the problem I always had was like dust would get underneath constantly. I would always have to unscrew it, take it back out, and just like wipe it down. It was impossible to keep the artwork looking completely clean. Um, so I love the fact that this thing that was one of the major selling points for me, to be completely honest, above almost everything else, the fact that it was made specifically to have your own artwork in here. Just, I loved it. You might also notice, I don't know how easy it is to tell from the camera here, but you might also notice that some of the artwork in the buttons, the artwork is also showing through the buttons. When I got these buttons, I can talk a little bit more about the buttons when we open it up too. But when I got these buttons, part of the reason I liked them was the fact that, you know, you could also put the art overlay on the inside of the buttons like this. And I had like the cutouts from this artwork when I got the template done. It came with the cutouts for the buttons. You could place artwork in here, right? But the thing that sort of I didn't account for is that it doesn't sit that snugly in here. And so as you're pushing buttons and playing the game, and you know, it's you know, these things are it's jostling up and down, and the artwork starts to move. And unfortunately, that leads to things like this girl's skirt being upside down, or this one's head kind of being upside down. So that didn't quite work out as well as I would have liked, but that's okay, right? Still cute, still cute. I do have half a mind at some point. We're not going to do it on this video, but I have half a mind at some point to like take these buttons all the way apart and maybe try to like tape down the artwork so that it stays put, so that the art actually shows properly through here. Because when it's all together, it does look really cool. Right now, it kind of takes away from this, which is unfortunate. But I just love the colors on this. The color scheme is great. It's super pretty. I love that there's a Sailor Moon arcade cabinet right here. We got the girls kind of hanging out, playing at the arcade. Sort of reminds me, I'll go into this a little bit more maybe later, but like it reminds me a lot of growing up as a kid, spending time in arcades, which is unusual, right? That's not normal. At least not, you know, even, you know, not to date myself here, but even, you know, when I was growing up, like arcades were not common in the US anymore. Like they had long since been kind of dead. But I guess I am getting into the story already. I was going to save this for while I was, you know what? I will save it. I'll save it so that I have something to talk about while I'm cleaning this. But I apologize. I should have scripted this out better. I had some of this scripted, and now we're kind of going off script. But from here now, we're going to go ahead and start doing some cleaning. I'm going to start by cleaning up the outside of the case. I've got some alcohol wipes over here, as well as some Q-tips and some cotton balls, so that when I need to do more, if I need to do any detail work, I can with the Q-tips. So I'm going to take just a little bit. Let's see if I can get the sound of this pouring in here. I don't know how well that's picking up, but I don't need very much, just a little bit of alcohol. So I don't need too much alcohol here, right? Just enough so that I can, you know, dip the Q-tips in. But to start with, I've got, just for a general clean, I've got some alcohol pads. I've always really liked kind of that sticky sound that you get when you have like your fingers, when you pinch your fingers onto like paper. Just the way that your fingers, I guess it's from like the oil on your fingers maybe, I'm not sure. I don't know the reason why you get this sticky noise, why your fingers stick to them like this, but you just do. And I really like that sound. But I can take this alcohol pad out here, and we're just going to kind of do a wipe down. This is typically when I'm cleaning my arcade stick. This is typically all I really do, is I just take an alcohol pad and I just sort of give the case a bit of a wipe down, just to kind of pick up any dirt or residue on here. Kind of see a couple places where it's caked on a little bit more than others. But just to start with, just to start a little bit of a brief, kind of just pass over everything. Because, sometimes this happens with any controller, any game controller. I think because there's so many of these here that are a little bit more, I'm going to take this cotton ball and get my alcohol here and just kind of dip it in that. And we're going to come down here. There was a little bit of dirt residue that was a little bit more caked on. So I'm just going to kind of give that a little bit of a scrub. You can also tell there's a little bit of dirt sort of trapped in there. We'll get that out. But with any controller, you're holding it, got it in your hands, and you've got oils on your hands, you've got dirt on your hands. Sometimes it doesn't even mean your hands are dirty, right? It's just part of normal wear and tear on things. The oils on our hands attach to things, and it picks up dirt, especially when intense gaming session, which fighting games are very rarely ever not intense, right? You can kind of wind up with slightly sweatier hands than you might otherwise. Just gonna get in all of those kind of little nooks and crannies right there, and yeah, you can kind of see already how much dirt I'm picking up there. I'm gonna take my Q-tip and we're just going to kind of come around these buttons here, get in between those, and give those a nice wipe down. Yeah, and then you can see here as we get in there. Oh, hang on, camera's over here. You can see there, like we are definitely getting some residue up here, especially around these buttons. It gets pretty bad. It gets a little gross, but we can fix that. That's what sessions like this, where we just kind of take a second in between the heat of battle, right? In between the heat of battle, and just give it some TLC, right? If you guys have controllers out there that you use, your preferred ones that maybe gets a little more use than others, that maybe sometimes need a little TLC like this, it's always good to kind of just wipe them down, clean them off, get them nice and fresh, and you'll see you'll feel the improvement that comes with that, right? Because if it's nice and clean, the buttons will press easier, the stick will turn a little bit more. I'm gonna kind of polish the ball here, because obviously my palm rests on this a lot, so you do wind up with some, again, our hands just have oils on them. It's fine. It's how everybody is. And so anything that you're using your hands with a lot, you're going to wind up with residue. It's just the way it works. I'm going to pull up this pleat. Ooh, there we go. Hang on. There we go. I'm going to pull up that pleat and get underneath there. Just get a good little sweep through. There we go. It's not too bad now. It's looking a little bit nicer. Got all of that loose dirt and dust up. And it just looks nice. We've got all this artwork on here. Super cute looking. We want to make sure it's visible. We want to make sure it's enjoyable. I know usually, I'm the only one who can see this thing because, it's not usually on camera like this. But I like looking at it, and I like being able to see it. And I like knowing But there's nothing really in the way between me and it. No dirt, no dust. It always makes me happy to look at whenever I play using this controller. I just love having something customized, having something that feels like mine. Because a lot of people have these kinds of controllers, right? They're very popular. Whether it's this one or another, model of Hori stick or another kind of stick entirely, or like a hitbox or the same way. Um, there's a lot of these out there. But like especially when you go places, like going to Frosty Frostings with this controller, it was so much fun. Like having this and being able to take it out and it just being very unique, right? Because yeah, there were other people with arcade sticks there for sure, but none of them look like this, and it's just very nice. Give it one more little bath of alcohol wipe here. Wipe this down. I'm gonna get sides here, and we are almost ready to open this up to look inside. There is a little bit of dirt caked in right here in here. I'm going to see if I can't get that a little bit more with this Q-tip. Hopefully that's giving you some nice sounds there. It's a little difficult to get in there. I might actually need to pull this up, which might mean taking the stick apart a little bit, which we'll try to do. I think I can do that without making too much noise. But one of the things I've also really always liked, because I do listen to a lot of ASMR, and just like light tapping on hard surfaces like this, especially like plastic, these plexiglass. I'll do some more of these button presses for you. Before I wrap up with the end of the video, I'll come back to these, give you guys some more specific sounds of the button presses, just some nice sounds that I think the stick makes in general and can make. So from here, it's time. We're going to open this up, so get ready. I'm going to turn this around and hope that I'm not making a lot of noise here. So now that this is turned around, I'm going to take this lever, the switch, flip it up, and you can see the hinge just kind of comes up there. Let me see how well I can actually get this to look on the screen. I think for the sake of doing this, I'm going to go ahead, didn't think about this beforehand, but I'm going to go ahead and remove the stick here. Take that apart and put it down elsewhere. Okay, because that way what we can do here is turn this over, set it down. Hopefully you guys will be able to see inside pretty easily. Yeah, I think you can there. And yeah, now it lies flat, just like that. And now we can see the inside of the stick. It's pretty simplistic, right? Not a whole lot going on in here. We've got the buttons and the wiring. The cable wraps up in here. For the sake of getting to everything, I'm going to go ahead and undo this and take this all out. I'm going to take this wire out of here. Gives you a little bit better of a look here. So one of the neat things about these buttons, I mentioned there was something about these, and I can show you the Hayabusa one as a comparison. Most buttons, they're snap tops or snap ins, I guess. I'm not sure what the actual term for them is, but you can see they've got these plastic tabs on them, and when you push them into the sockets, those tabs squeeze in and then pop out, and they keep them from coming back out. That's great, but the problem I have with this kind is that it can be very difficult, when you're trying to take them back out, to squeeze this down to the point where you can take it back out. I've hurt my hands a couple of times trying to do that on sticks that had buttons like this. And over time, these tabs tend to break. You can see actually on the bottom of this one, maybe if I bring this a little closer, you can already kind of see right there where this has started to sort of like that plastic started starting to wear away. I can talk. Apologies. These buttons here that I replaced these with are different than that. They're actually screw top buttons, or screw in buttons, screw bottom buttons, I guess is probably the word for them. The difference is they just kind of slip in, they seat in, and they have this plastic ring that you screw around the bottom of them, that then pushes up against the bottom, and that holds it in place. Much easier to get in and out, and it's also much less likely to break. So here, right here, we have the actual stick base. This was the part that I mentioned was the Sanwa base part. And on the top here, you guys have heard me talk about this before, right? If you've seen me go between fighting games, I've talked about, whether it's in the Discord or sometimes on stream, I will talk about the gate. This is the gate. It's on the very bottom. Remember, the top of the stick is below. This is on its back now, but this is on the very bottom of the stick, right? And I'll go ahead and undo these here so that I can show you. We need to take this off anyways in order to get to stick parts to do some maintenance. Hopefully not making too much noise getting this out. I think we're mostly okay. It's a little tricky to get out sometimes. There we go. So the stick bumps up. This is basically the guideline that the stick can go along. If the gate's not there, there's nothing stopping the stick from just kind of going wherever. And this gives the stick a guideline to slide along in order to hit the switches that are down in here. This is a square gate. I use this for Dragon Ball FighterZ. A square gate has hard stops in the four corners, which means if you're holding down back, it'll rest there. If you're holding, up and to the left, up or up, back, up, forward, down, forward, those are the hard stops for this controller. It's where the stick will rest. It won't let it go any further. This is useful for me in Dragon Ball specifically because you do have to go, it's a very fast-paced game, right? You have to go between blocking low and blocking high very often and very quickly. And for me, having that hard stop down here at the down back portion really helps me do that. Now the other one I have, which is over here, should have had this a little bit handier before. I didn't quite think that part through, but that's okay. We're gonna get it. It's right over, hang on. Here it is, I found it. This is my other one. This is an octogate. The difference between this now is that this has 8 stopping points instead of just 4, which is why it's called an octogate. And so that means that every point along, every direction you can do in the game is its own hard stopping point. I use this one pretty much everything that isn't Dragon Ball. Now, why is that? Well, here's the thing. Dragon Ball is extremely lenient on its inputs. I think I've talked about this before too. So you can, the game will kind of fill in the blanks for you. If you do something that it kind of looks at what you're doing and is like, hey, pretty sure you wanted, a quarter circle back, or, you know, a 214 or 213, however you want to notate that. But it's pretty, like, I'm pretty sure this is what you wanted, and I was going to give it to you, right? A lot of games aren't like that. A lot of games are a lot more strict. You have to be way more deliberate with your directional inputs. I'm not very good at that. I'm really not good at that. And Octogate kind of helps me with that. It smooths out my inputs a little, so it makes it a little easier for me to be able to do that and get those inputs in properly. Now, the reason I don't use this for Dragon Ball is it can be very easy sometimes, especially when things are fast-paced and chaotic, right? It can be very easy to mistake down and down back because of how they feel when resting. What happens to me a lot of times in Dragon Ball when I'm trying to use an Octogate, because I've tried a couple times, what happens to me a lot of times is something will hit me and I'll be like, wait, why did that hit me? I was blocking. It turns out I wasn't blocking. I was holding down. That's why I use the square gate in Dragon Ball. That's why I don't use this one. But what I like about having, technically speaking, right, the gates here are interchangeable, by which I mean the actual piece here in the middle of the ring, this can come out. So can this. I don't actually need two separate things here, but for me, it's far easier to just take one of these off and put the other one on than to come in here and, you know, you have to push this up and then slide this around, which is not that difficult. It's a little difficult. It's not that difficult. So this can slide like that. And I think I put it, did I put it the right direction? No, yeah, so I go one more over. I think. How does this come out? Hang on. I did go the wrong direction. It's basically, you basically have to unlock it, right? Would probably have been easier to show with the square gate because it really only has the one direction it can go, right? This one has multiple. It's fine. This doesn't matter for this. Let me do it with the square gate. It's a little easier. So this comes up and can slide. You can see here why I don't do this, but this slides out. And then this ring in here could just go in here. But you can see the reason I don't do that. It takes a while. It takes a long time, and it's a little rough on my hands. So instead, I just keep this one for my square gate and this one for my Octogate. And I just swap them out as needed. Doesn't take very long. Swapping these particular things, pretty easy. I'm gonna set this aside. So I'm gonna go ahead and disconnect this wire here. I'm just gonna take a brief moment. Hopefully I don't completely ruin my nails doing this. There we go. I'm gonna take that apart there just so I can go ahead and start taking these pieces out. So this is the main base of the Sanwa stick. So you can hear, go ahead and put this over by the microphone so you can hear it. You can hear the clicks of the micro switches. This is what the stick presses against to actually get those inputs. Be a little careful. I don't want to, you know, do too much with that PCB on the back, but but you can also see here, let me put this towards the camera here, you can see that starts to get dirty. It's maybe a little tricky it's not focusing very well, but there's definitely some dirt buildup on these switches. And while it doesn't stop it from working, you still push down just fine. Over time, that does start to impact how much work you would have to do to press that down, because it will start to kind of, you know, gunk it up a little. So we're going to go ahead and give this a little bit of a bath. Okay, I got my Q-tip. We're just going to kind of come in here and very gently, just kind of use the Q-tip to wipe up all that gunk. all that gunk and all that grime. Give the actual piece itself a little bit of a bath too there. But really, the big part of this is these switches. Just getting that residue off and getting it nice and clean. Nice and clean. So while I do this, because this could take a little bit of time while I'm wiping this down, I started telling the story. Like I said, arcades in the US, not that common anymore, and they weren't either when I was growing up, when I was little. Very uncommon. I just happened to be very lucky, and the mall nearby, my parents, where I grew up, where the mall that we went to all the time, in the house I grew up in, my parents still live there, but that mall had a cute little arcade down in the corner, and it was there for a very long time. It was there all throughout when I was in middle school and high school, and I spent a lot of time at the mall, especially in my high school years. It was a nice place for me to get away and just kind of be by myself. And I wound up spending a lot of time just kind of hanging out in that arcade. And because of that, that was kind of how I got my introduction to fighting games. I mean, I think like a lot of people, I first really knew what not video games, sorry, although video games too, I guess, but first really knew what fighting games through, console stuff. Some of my friends had, some of my guy friends while I was growing up had, some fighting game stuff on their home consoles. But I was never that into it at the time. But the first game that really got me into fighting games, answering some questions that I know some of you have had before, right? The first game that really got me into it was Marvel vs. Capcom. Now, I say that I'm not a very big Marvel fan, but I played a lot of Mega Man. And one of the characters in Marvel vs. Capcom is Mega Man. And I really enjoyed that I could play as that character. I thought it was really fun. And it was a very anime, very anime in its look, right? Marvel vs. Capcom, if you've ever seen the original, and actually it was Marvel vs. Capcom 2, but I did also play some Marvel vs. Capcom, the first one too. It looks extremely anime, and that drew me to it because I was, a giant weeb. Go figure. Who would have guessed? And so, the look of it was what pulled me to it at first. And then I was like, oh, wait, Mega Man's in this thing. Mega Man can beat up Ryu. That's a thing I can do. Cool. And so I was like, okay, I need to try this. And then I found out you could play as Roll, who is notoriously one of the worst characters in fighting games ever. But I didn't care. I was just really excited that you could play as Roll. So I played as her all the time in Marvel 2. All the time. My team for I've had a couple teams over time, like as I played more and got a little better with it, my team changed. But talking about growing up specifically, my team was Chandon, Roll, and Ruby Hearts, the pirate, who I thought was really cool. I thought she was really, really badass looking. Just this really cool lady pirate. Really, really, really pretty. may have been a hint for things to come, but I thought she was awesome. So, okay, that is this now kind of cleaned off. Got a bunch of residue off of that. We're gonna go ahead and set this to the side very carefully. Okay, so it just occurred to me, I did not have a screwdriver on hand, which I will need to take this apart at this point. I can't go any further with this without doing that. So, I will be right back while I go do that. We're gonna make a cut here, so you guys will see me come right back, but I will be back in just a moment. Okay, everybody, I am back now, and I have a screwdriver with the required heads here. Pretty sure I just need a basic Phillips for this. And we're gonna just kind of unscrew this plate here. So like I was saying, I was talking about the fact that I just happened to grow up with an arcade nearby. And I think that shaped a lot of the fact, I think without that, I don't think I would have wound up being the fighting game player that I am today. Because, it's maybe an unusual origin story, but I really enjoyed it. I wasn't very good, right? Obviously, but I was also a little kid. I mostly played against the computer. Not a lot of people in the arcades were, let's just say I wasn't a person that people looked at and decided that, I was who they were going to play against, right? It was mostly, I think they just wanted to let me have fun against the computer. Okay, so here we go. So here now is the rest of the stick base. So the actual stick part itself would go here, and I would be able to show you that, it can, moving that around moves this down here. Right now, just kind of in a very easy motion because there's no gate. I'm going to go ahead and wipe this down because it does look very dirty. And then we'll go ahead and dismantle the stick part in the back here. And we're going to work on re-greasing the base of the stick. I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. But to start with, because of how this is here, I'm just going to take another alcohol pad. And we're just going to wipe it down. How are you guys doing tonight? I hope you've had a relaxing time watching this. I hope it's been helpful. I know not a lot of trigger sounds in this. More just kind of a chill hangout. Hopefully me talking to you while I do this, though, has been interesting. Hopefully this answers some of the questions you guys have had about the controller I use and about me. You can see a lot of dirt and cat hair because Ginkgo likes to sleep on this thing. So we've got a lot of cat hair in here. So that's that side cleaned up a little bit more. Now down here. So from here, in fact, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to move this. I'm going to move the controller out of the way because now we're going to do something a little bit more specific. So I need to take this seating out of here. Now, there are screws here, but I don't need to take those out. What I actually need to do I will need the screwdriver for this though. So I'm going to need a simple flathead top here. And I'm going to just very carefully, because this is on a spring, I'm going to just kind of wedge this ring off, and this immediately then comes out. So I have to be kind of careful here because I need to keep in mind the order that this went. Right, so we have the top, we have the plunger, we have the spring, we have the base. Right, we're gonna put those like that just so that we can keep them in mind in order. So now from here, the rest of the stick slides right out. And we now have the stick dismantled. So the washer here is what needs some attention. And it does. It's actually, it's not as bad. I will say it's not anywhere close to as bad as the last time I did this, right? Because there had been, it'd been a long time since I had done that. And it was basically, obviously this is a white, washer here, right? White plastic washer. Let me see if we can get any kind of, not really, a little bit of plastic tapping on that. It's a white piece, right? It looked gray. It was gray. It was not white. It was gray. Just because of how much dirt and gunk and dried grease was on it. So we're just gonna take another alcohol wipe here, and we're gonna just kind of let this thing. And honestly, a lot of this black on here is mostly cat hair. Again, courtesy of Ginkgo. But I can go ahead and get the back of this now. I'm going to take another Q-tip here and get that into the alcohol so we can get in the inside here and just really get all of this little grime off. There we go. And then kind of dry it off. Now we're not done with this piece yet, right? But for the time being, I'm going to set it aside because we do need to also wipe these things down. So the base here also has a bunch of debris on it. This is also part of where the grease kind of builds up. Now I say grease, I do mean grease, because one of the things that I think not a lot of people know is that the bottom of the stick, the bottom of the arcade controller of the lever, should really be lubricated so that it can slide easily when you're trying to move the stick around. I'm trying really hard, guys, to not make this innuendo, but it's impossible with this. But so that's part of why these bottom pieces here get so dirty so fast, because you've got a layer of grease on everything, and that works really well to lubricate it, but it also picks up dirt very easily. The spring doesn't really need much here. This is, I believe, this is a 2-pound spring. I think the weight of the spring changes how heavy your movements with the stick have to be. The stick itself came with, I believe, a 1/2-pound weight spring. I didn't quite like that. I didn't quite like the feel of that. And I have a couple. I can show you here. This is my pouch where I have all of my arcade stick maintenance stuff in here. But among other things, I do have, so here, this is the stick grease that we're going to be applying some of. It's a very small amount. We really don't need much. But I also have some other springs here, just so that you can see. So this is the 2 pound. This is the one I'm going to be putting back on. But I've also got this one, which I believe might be a 1 pound. And I have this one, which I believe is a 4 pound, because it's definitely a harder one to press down. And the pounds, when I talk about the pounds, obviously these strings don't weigh that much, right? What the pounds is referring to is the amount of force that has to be pushed in. You need 2 pounds of force to compress that, whereas you need 4 pounds of force to compress this one. Oh, by the way, I talked about this earlier. This is the converter stick that I mentioned. This plugs into the cable, and it converts it from a Xbox controller into a PS4 controller. Very handy. It's a Brook Wingman. These are fantastic. So now that we've got the grease out, I'm going to do a little tiny bit more wiping down of our parts here. These are not that bad though. This is just getting up some dust. Get a little bit of debris off of the ring that goes on the top here. Again, not too much that needs to be happening right there. So I am going to also wipe down the bottom of this, because definitely you can see immediately there that picked up a bunch of dirt. That gets very, very dirty very fast. And on this side over here, this is where the washer is going to sit. And you'll see here, yeah, a bunch of dirt, because this is where all the grease got caught. Okay. And from here, I think it's time to start putting it back together. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to open this up. And you can see it's a tiny amount of grease. We really don't need much here at all. I'm going to take this and take just a little bit of this grease, just a little bit that fits in my fingertip right there. You can barely even see it. I'm just going to coat this piece in this grease. Coat the piece in the grease. Piece, grease. Coat the piece in the grease. Get it nice and coated. Okay. And then it's going to slide right in there. Cool. Okay. So from here, oh, we did not actually wipe this down. We should probably do that. It's good. It'll give me a chance to get this grease off my fingers also. So just going to give this a quick wipe. Don't need to do too much with it. But there's definitely some dirt on the tip here. I'm just gonna, I realize none of this really makes noise, so hopefully just spending time with me is acceptable for this. Okay, so this is gonna slide in here. Okay, got that in here. So now we come back down to the bottom. Okay, got our base, our spring. Now this part gets tricky. So now this comes in here, and I have to get this ring back into place here. There we go, it went. The reason why this gets tricky is because this is on a spring. If you're not careful, this part will just shoot out. Fun times. So all that done, the arcade stick is now properly cleaned and re-lubricated. And it's time to put it back together. I clear my workspace a little here. We're going to bring the stick back up. So I'm going to move this wire back out of the way. We're bringing this back in here. Okay. Setting this down. And really hoping that that didn't just make a bunch of noise for you guys. But that's still, we're setting that back in place. We need the Phillips head screwdriver back here. So we're going to take this thing off here, return it to this one, and screw this back in. But like I said earlier, the fact that I kind of grew up with the arcade experience, as it were, and that was my, my real introduction to fighting games was through that. I was pretty much used to playing with that control scheme. So when it came time for me a little later to get back into things, specifically when Skullgirls came out, and I decided I wanted to get back into things again. I was like, I enjoyed playing these kind of games before. I want to learn how to play them for real. It just seemed natural to go for an arcade stick. So I did. Okay, so now this is going to seat back in here. If I remember correctly, hopefully I have this right. I believe the prongs were on this side. Make sure that that lines back up, right? So that's back in place. We're going to put this guy back in here. I do have to be careful because there is a wrong way to do this, right? Thankfully, if I plug this in wrong, it's not going to break anything. It just means that the stick portion won't work. So I just need to open it back up and fix that. But hopefully I get this right the first time, so I don't need to do that because that would be annoying. Okay, just snaps in. Now we go back to our square gate because it's more likely than not that I'm going to play Dragon Ball at some point soon. And I just snap this in place. I'm being very careful. I'm being very careful, not because I have to be, but because I don't want to make a lot of noise here for you guys. There we go. Hopefully that wasn't too sharp of a sound. And that's it. I think what I can do before we finish here is I will just sort of do a little bit of wipe down of the rest of this, the rest of the inside of this, because it's kind of dirty. It's dusty, nothing that needs to be too scrubbed, but, just taking a wipe along here and just kind of getting rid of this dust. So giving it a nice cleanup, a nice little bath. Not necessary for maintenance of the stick as far as performance goes, but it's nice to just kind of get it clean looking. And I think I need to turn this back over so that I can get to the inside here. Hopefully that won't. There we we go. It might be a little tricky to see. Oh no, it's fine. All right. Now, I wish I had, well, no, that's not true. I do have some compressed air, which would probably be the smarter way to get rid of this dust that's in here, but that would be a very harsh noise for you guys, and I don't want to do that to you. So instead, we're just kind of going to do a little bit of wiping down with some more alcohol pads. Maybe not the most thorough cleaning here, but it will get the job done. So I'm just going to go ahead here and just sort of run a pad just along the little nooks and crannies here, just to kind of pick up this dust. But nothing too bad is in here. It's just some dust and some cat hair, and that's about it. Nothing that's going to hurt anything, nothing that's going to impede the performance of the stick. It's just a little dusty. So easy enough to clean up. Let me go ahead and, yeah, this one's still, this is, oh, I'm just about out of alcohol here, which is good because I'm just about done. So it means that I poured the perfect amounts. Go figure. That never happens. I always wind up with too much. So it's a little wild that I actually got the amount right this time. I'm just gonna kind of, you know, wipe these little individual squares down just to get the dust picked up, just to get it nice and clean, nice and tidy. There we go. And right along the edges there. And that's that. We now have a clean arcade stick for the most part. A couple of little spots of dust up there I just grabbed. And we're going to go ahead and I'm going to wind this back up very carefully because, you know, these little wires in here, they definitely are, they're definitely very delicate, right? And they are much more difficult to replace than pretty much anything else in here. So it's not entirely true. Probably the most expensive and most difficult part to replace would be the PCB, but the little wires would definitely be hard to find. I'm also not much of an electrician, so that would be very difficult for me to, there is actually, I noticed in here, there is a little place for this part to snap into. And it's down here. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Without making much noise. It's about as good as it gets, I suppose. Doesn't properly snap in. I thought it might when I saw that in there, but I think it's just there to rest in there. And now we close up. It snaps shut. And we're done. And got the stick lever again. Put it back in place here. And we're done. Have a nice, clean, and maintained arcade controller. Close this out here now. I will give you guys a little bit of controller sounds just to kind of wrap us up for the evening. I guess to answer another question, I get quite a bit, right? Especially in Dragon Ball, people ask me, what's my layout, right? And by layout, like meaning which buttons apply to which commands in game. So here we have my light button, my jabs, my auto combo, what have you, my medium button, heavy button, my special button or key glass button, whatever you want to call that, my first assist, my second assist, and then over here I have sparking macroed to this button here, and I have Dragon Rush macroed to this button here. Guess what button I never push? I never push this button. Ever. If I was smart, and smart if I have it macroed, if I was smart, I would be trying to tech with this button. I don't push it though. Because for those who don't know, you can also get those commands, so Super Dash and Dragon Rush. You can get them by pushing two buttons at the same time. So Dragon Rush is light and medium, so I push these two whenever I Dragon Rush. It's just what I do. Super Dash is heavy and special, so I tend to do that when I want to Super Dash. Vanish, I believe, is medium and heavy, so I do that when I want to vanish. All four of these together is Spark. I have this here because pushing one button means it's much less likely that you screw that up. I still do this all the time though. I'm so used to doing this. I just do all four buttons at once. Usually, if you hear me on stream complain that I put in Spark and didn't get it, it's probably because I did this and not this. It's just how it is. If you were wondering, that is also the reason why this color scheme is the way it is, because these are my basic buttons here, right? Special, light, medium, heavy, and these are my assists. Assist 1, assist 2. I tend to follow some kind of formula with that kind of flow for pretty much any game. My light, medium, heavy. Street Fighter, I just go with the standard Capcom thing, which is light punch, medium punch, heavy punch, light kick, medium kick, heavy kick. Guilty Gear. Guilty Gear is a little different. So I've got my punch, I've got my kick, I've got slash, heavy slash. This is my dash button, my dash macro. And then I believe Roman cancel and burst. I don't remember what I use this for. I don't remember. But also, because Roman cancel and burst also are multi-button inputs, I tend to just do that too. So, but hopefully you enjoyed this tonight. I really hope you did. And we'll kind of wind down. Let me do some taps here. Button presses. Very soft button presses. Don't want to do it too loud for you guys. The sound of the lever triggering the micro switches, which are now nice and clean, and the stick, which is now nice and lubricated. So it moves very easily, very smoothly. And just kind of some tracing along our nice, shiny and clean plexiglass. So I can now get my fingerprints all over it. I'm joking mostly. It actually is pretty good about not showing fingerprints, which is nice. But I've got Sailor Moon over here. Got thumb over here. For anybody who, any of you like deep lore weebs out there who are familiar with Yudasai Gatsura. Got gal number 1 over here playing that lum game. Got gal over two, gal over two, gal number two, gal number two over here. Just kind of watching in awe as her friend gets the high score. Got a little racing game down here. Love it. I love this artwork so much. And that's that. That's my arcade stick. Thank you so much for keeping me company while I did some maintenance and cleaning on it. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope if you were using this for uh, a nice relaxing time to help you wind down and get to sleep. If you're already asleep, then hopefully I did my job well. If you're not, I hope I helped you get to the point where you can get there a little easier. I'll see you guys around. I hope you had a great time. Until the next stream, I hope you have a wonderful night, and I'll see you later. Good night, everybody.